Okay, I'll call the special city council meeting of May 27th, 2020, noon to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Copeland,
Here.
Tom Baylor,
Here.
Kathy Sherman,
Here.
Jeff Guard,
Here.
Melina Meyer,
Here.
Ann Schaefer,
Here.
David Allison,
Here.
David Gleason.
I'm here.
That's a quorum of council.
Okay, thank you. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
This is approved.
Are there any modifications? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved as submitted. Does council have any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications to disclose? Okay, hearing none. We have guest speakers under communications by and petitions from visitors. We have an incident management team report on the incident COVID-19.
Hello, everyone. This is Heather. I was just going through our report from the last time I was here, and I think one of the things that I've noticed is at that time we had a number of projects that had been put into place but not quite finished. So what we have finished is the harbor project. All the instant signage have been put up. They're out. Everyone knows the process down at the harbor. We have hired 4 ambassadors for the port, which would be the harbor, the airport, and then again in July, I believe, when the ferry terminal opens up, we'll have folks placed down there as well. We've received a great amount of mutual aid agreements from the businesses and the fishermen. So we just want to say thank you to all of those folks for participating in the process and helping to keep Cordova safe through those plans. As another portion of our harbor plan, pool showers are open and advertised to kind of help everyone keep up with that good hygiene. The Copper River Marketing Association has been down at the docks distributing masks and sharing masks with our ambassadors, which is very much appreciated. The city is placing an order for another 1,200 masks today to help with the contribution of the Cordova mask makers, to kind of give those ladies a little bit of a break. As far as our industry leaders, our processors are successfully moving forward. Ocean Beauty and Trident both have required nurses for their facilities, and they have been collaborating with our public health care. There is a fence being put up on Jim 4 Lane to kind of help delineate some of the traffic through that area. And today the city shop brought down signage for that road closure. Also, hand sanitizer has been ordered through the city and is being distributed through Napa Auto Parts. I believe they collaborated on that project to get those sent out to the community. This hand sanitizer is for business use only, as some of our non-essential businesses are starting to open back up. And as they do this, we kind of ask that you respect store processes. So they are allowed to open. Each business is allowed to kind of put their own procedures and safety protocols in place. So you may see them, asking that community members do different things when they come in as far as, keeping that social distance and safety going. The Cordova Chamber is doing a great job working on the recovery of our community. They have their Come Back Better campaign, and they're working pretty diligently with all of our different businesses, trying to make sure that they are engaged in getting the resources that they need in order to successfully reopen. I spoke with Jenny Ragland at the Salvation Army today, and they've received a number of donations that have been helping them to supply our community members in need with food. We have, I think we served 70 people this last distribution day. And in addition, they've received enough donations at this point that they are able to do a second meeting for this month. So that is, or a second distribution day, I guess we should call it, which is amazing because that means that we are, well supported by our community and by our people. In addition to that, Jenny has something called a Can Do Fund that's available. And I would highly encourage anyone who's interested in this, or if you know anyone who may need help, the Can Do Fund is a grant that was given to the Salvation Army to help support monetary needs of folks who may have trouble meeting their bills or their payments during COVID-19. And up until the end of this week, you can get a hold of Jenny at 907-339-3440 and apply for a portion of this grant. And what it basically does will pay any over amount on any bills the community member has. So if you know someone that is having a tough time or that hasn't been able to work or they need to catch up their bills, please push that number forward because Jenny would like to be able to use those funds to help support our community. And for right now, that is what I have. I'd like to say thank you for the effort of all the community members, the city entities, the businesses, the agencies, the industries. The way that we have done this whole community approach to kind of tending to things has been probably the driving effort in our success as a community. And I would just like to ask that moving forward, when we come across the little bumps in the hills and the valleys, to kind of remember that, us fusing together as a community is what makes us stronger. And I would like to ask that everybody just remain a little bit vigilant, even though we are kind of loosening up to see, what this is going to look like for us in the next few coming months.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Before I go through the council list for questions, I just want to let the audience know the next item is going to be audience comments. So now would be the time to call in at 253-6202. And then depending on your internet connection, you're going to be 30 seconds to a minute behind. So just recognize the meeting has probably progressed a little bit farther than you think it has when you called. So that number again is 253-6202. We tested and troubleshot and tried to fix the on-hold system, and it's still giving us fits. So please be patient with us. If you call in and we don't pick up right away, call in again. We do rely on public input. So again, 253-6202, and I'll go through the council list for questions of the incident management team. And I would just mention also for council's benefit, in the room we have your incident management team leader, Paul Trumbley, and his deputy, Mike Hicks, Jason Gabrielson with IT, myself, and Susan, the city clerk. So there's just us five in the audience here. And we also have Dr. Sanders on the line until 1 p.m. So if you have any questions for her or Heather.
And the city manager is on the line.
And also Helen Howard, the city manager. So any questions of the incident management team, Councilman Baylor?
No.
Councilman Sherman?
No, thank you. Heather, I was just going to ask if you would share the Salvation Army information with me, and I'll put it out in the e-news on Friday. Thanks.
Absolutely, Kathy. She's actually supposed to be sending me a flyer today because she's got to the beginning of next week to get those out. And they are actually hoping that Can Do Fund rolls over into the next month because they haven't used a lot of it and they would like to be able to retain that to support communities.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. I just add that getting those to the utilities and so forth, if people are struggling with their bills, they could refer them as well. So, Councilman Gard.
No comment. Just thank you very much for a job well done.
Yeah, Vice Mayor Meyer.
Yeah, since we have you on the line, can you repeat Jenny's number for Salvation Army to pass along?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's 907-339-3440, and that is to her office at the Salvation Army headquarters in Anchorage. And basically, anyone can just call that number, let them know that you're requesting can-do fund assistance, and she will get whichever information she needs and place that.
Okay, and then I had one other question about the 424 well number. How's that going? And just a little bit more about it.
So the Native Village of EAC is helping support us with that, and they're doing a great job. Brooke Mallory gets on there every single day and does an update that I believe is worked on between her and Kathy Sherman so that we have consistent information. But basically every day she calls that line and leaves a new updated message on COVID information that's going on in Cordova. In addition to the 424 well line, there's also a 424 info line right now. And that line is a gentleman from the city who, if you have questions, he will direct you to the person that can best assist you or answer you with, you know, any amount of information that he's been supplied on kind of what's going on with the incident management team, you know, things that you need for your business, et cetera. So between those two lines, we're actually hoping to be able to kind of expediently assist a lot of folks and get some more information out there for the folks who aren't so much web-based or, you know, on Facebook and such.
All right, great. Those sound like two great resources for the community and also Salvation Army, so three there. Should I ask the questions for Dr. Sanders now, or should we wait till the next round, Clay?
If it's an IMT kind of related question, if it's one to the action item, you could save it till then.
Okay, I'll ask my question about testing then. And this could be for Heather or for Dr. Sanders. I was just curious. I know that the testing number has how many capabilities on the website, but as we increase in population and also now that it's available for anyone to go get it, do we have access to more testing, or how is that supply chain working for us in Cordova?
Right now, our supply chain is excellent. I think that our testing capacity is even close to 3,000, and we don't anticipate having any shortages in the supply chain in the near future.
Great, thanks. Good to hear.
Okay, was that all, Vice Mayor Meyer?
Yeah, I can ask my other questions during the action item.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Councilman Schaefer?
Hi, yeah, thanks for all that information. My comment was mostly, going to be about advertising that information about the Salvation Army, but it sounds like you guys are on that. And I would also, how are those phone numbers being advertised? I guess I hadn't heard of those. So any way that you can we can let people know that those phone numbers are available, I think we should do. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Heather, did you want to respond to the advertising on those phone numbers?
Absolutely. We have an infographic out, I believe, on Facebook and the city website that has the well line on. The info line information, I am not quite sure how we're pumping that out yet because it came out after the infographic was made, but I'm guessing that Kathy has a plan for that, and we can throw something up on Facebook as well. I can probably add it to the bottom of the existing infographic, and we can swap it out.
Yeah, I would just add that I've been advertising the info line on the daily radio briefings and also on the Tuesday afternoon press briefing last night, and I know I've had a lot of comments that people listen to and watch those. So does that answer your question, Councilman Schaefer?
Yeah, that's great.
Great. Yeah, the well line I hadn't heard of actually, but these are both fairly new as of end of last week. So
yeah, just so people know about them, use them.
You bet. Councilman Allison.
Yeah, no question. Thank you, Heather and the IMP, for the work you're doing.
Councilman Gleason.
Yeah, I got a question. So I was curious how the Ocean Beauty employee that tested positive is faring. I noticed it still says we have a case, but recovery. So what's going on there?
Some of that may be bound by HIPAA rules. Dr. Sanders, is that a question you can answer?
I can tell you that our strategy is going to be that once somebody is positive, they will have to have a negative test, and then 24 hours later have a negative test, before they will be released from their quarantine. And I do not know the exact status or have that publicly available right now.
Okay, thanks. And thanks for the report, Heather.
Okay, council, you've all had one pass. Any other questions from council that might have come to mind? Okay, well, thank you, Heather. Appreciate the update. And we'll move on to, is there any last things you'd like to add, Heather or Dr. Sanders? Okay, thank you. We'll go to the phone lines now for audience comments. Okay, caller, you're on. If you could state your name for the record and 3 minutes, please.
Hi, this is Kathy Renfeld calling on behalf of the Cordova Chamber of Commerce, and I wanted to just give some information about the reopening status and the feedback I'm getting from businesses, and also on some new response programs for COVID-19 that we're working with some partners on. So in regards to reopening police stations, following medical advice from our medical advisors is considering...
Kathy, we're having a very difficult time hearing you clearly.
I'm sorry, is this better?
That's much better.
Okay, sorry about that. So regarding reopening to phase 3-4, I know that following medical advice, the council is considering a June 1st date for that, and I've been communicating with businesses about that, and I think my take that I'd like to share with you is that something that I've said before, and I just want to say again, these businesses are, they're not going to reopen if they're not ready. They're putting in place precautions that will keep them and their customers safe. Many of them are going above and beyond the protocols and guidance that is suggested by the state. So I would not be concerned with moving to that next step. The businesses that I've talked to, many of them are waiting until we get to phase 3-4 to open, because the limitations of the protocols in phase 1A and 2 would make it very difficult for them to open and operate to the capacity that they need to in order to turn a profit. So that's my feedback on that. Also wanted to let you know that the city manager mentioned earlier about Cordova Cares Box is a program that we're working on together. She had that idea to try to incentivize plastic behavior, and basically there are little $5 certificates that will be handed out by the ambassadors and by other individuals, possibly including you city council members, when you see people practicing good healthy behaviors like washing their hands and practicing good social distance and wearing a face covering. And then those individuals take them into businesses and send them like cash to the businesses. And one very positive side effect of this is that there is a support for local business that's being built through this. We're not only rewarding that person that's having a good behavior, but we're also rewarding whatever business they choose to spend that money at. And this is a really positive step, I think, in trying to rebuild that connection between businesses and their patrons that they always have to do whenever they're closed down for any amount of time. I just wanted to share those two things with the council.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Appreciate it. So again, that call-in number is 253-6202. And while we're waiting for calls to come in, council, I just want to preface the new business item. I did a little bit of footwork in preparation for this meeting because I wanted to facilitate a good meeting. And last meeting, I was concerned that maybe there were a little bit of separations on one action item that that ended up in a lot of extra footwork by council. And again, this is kind of challenging. These are challenging steps. and we're balancing, each and every one of you is trying to balance lives and livelihoods and reopening and so forth. And so the productive way, I looked at things like splitting the question or ways to, there's essentially two things in front of you on this next item is, one is if and when to follow the state's mandate leads, and then whether or not to keep the mask rules in place and uphold the emergency rules. And so if there's a division on council on those, I think the effective way is just move through them with amendments. If there's elements of the mask rule that you do or don't like, or the mask rule in general, or certain elements of the emergency rules, I think that would be the productive way, is just pick them off as amendments that we can shape them into something that council can come to consensus on and not necessarily take 2 or 3 hours to get there. So that's just a little preparatory, and it doesn't look like we have any other calls coming in. So I'll move on to correspondence. We have an email from Ms. Hauk and another from Mr. Hansen. Is there any council comments on those? And I'll just go quickly through the lists. Councilman Schaefer?
No comment. Thank you for taking the time to write in.
You bet. Sherman?
No comments, but I appreciated both of their letters.
Baylor?
Yeah, definitely appreciate those letters. And it's kind of probably goes right down council divide. You have people that are afraid of the shadows, and there's people that want to get this community up and running. And so I appreciate those letters, and I kind of agree with the Mr. Hansen's letter. Thank you.
Councilman Meyer?
Yeah, big thanks to these letters that people are sending us to on council. I know that they take a lot of time and thought into writing them. Really appreciate it. And even the one that we got afterwards, I think today or yesterday, it will be in probably our next packet. But really appreciate people taking the time to write down their thoughts, and just kind of to anybody else in the public too. You can send council a message, even if it's just a one-line, couple-line messages. Either way, really appreciate hearing from the community.
Councilman Allison?
Yeah, as always, and like everybody else, appreciate the efforts the public makes to give us their input, and it's very much appreciated, and hope it continues and increases, and thank you again.
Councilman Gleason?
It's more of the same. I appreciate the letters and the time that they took to write down their specific points of view.
Okay, thank you, Council. New business item, we have resolution 05-20-23, and this is a resolution of the Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, adopting recommendations of the Incident Management Team Medical Unit of Medical Directors, confirming implementation of phases 3 and 4 of the state's Reopen Alaska Responsibly Plan, effective June 1st, 2020, within city boundaries, so long as the city temporary emergency COVID-19 rules remain in effect, and ratifying amendment to Emergency Rule 15 facial coverings as an emergency order 2020-08.
Mrs. Sherman moved.
Councilman Sherman.
Make a motion to put it on the table.
Okay. And
that motion.
And I heard a second, Councilman Guard. Okay, Councilman Sherman, would you like to speak to your motion?
Only that I'm in favor of this motion. I'd like to hear where the rest of the council stands, and I appreciate the fact that the medical team weighed in with so much information. And I've been doing a lot of reading and soul searching on this, so I'm anxious to hear what the rest of the council has to say.
Okay, Councilman Guard, your second.
it pretty well stated by Councilmember Sherman my position. I'm in favor of opening as rapidly as we can, but doing so on a science-based directive. So I am in favor of this, and that's all.
Okay, and then I'll just go through the list in order here. Vice Mayor Meyer?
Yeah, like what was said, I really appreciate the very in-depth kind of recommendation by specifically the medical team on there with the incident management team. And kind of when you were talking before about amendments or splitting the discussion between masks or there's amendments made, I'm kind of on board and kind of just reading through this too. I think that the suggestion was moving to phase 3/4 with the mask rule intact. So that's kind of for my thoughts is it was split, and I wouldn't be in favor of it. I think having the mask rule takes pressure off businesses to be convinced to not have a mask rule or bend their rules, or I think it creates kind of a no mask businesses, and I really think that the mask rule is there to protect all of Cordova. And so I did have a question for Dr. Sanders about masks, kind of maybe if she can explain a little bit of how to wear them, how to clean them, and even if you're wearing a mask that maybe you don't wash too often, does it still protect others? Because kind of when I was looking at it, if you're not treating your mask the way that you're supposed to, then, that is kind of an individual decision. But wearing a mask, whatever kind of facial covering, I believe, protects others. So I just wanted to hear Dr. Sanders if that was indeed true, or kind of just a rundown on masks in general, facial covering.
You bet, Councilman Meyer, that Dr. Sanders would be speaking to the motion, and I asked you to kind of push that question to the action item here. So, Dr. Sanders, I think the question is basically what is good mask wearing and care protocols?
So just like when you sneeze and you cover your mouth, when you have a mask over your face while you're breathing or talking, it captures any of those larger respiratory droplets before they get out into the air. Now those droplets, they're larger when they're first coming out of your mouth, and then they get smaller and smaller, of course, as part of the water evaporates from it. And we end up with very small particulates out in the environment around us. So wearing a mask really captures and decreases the airborne droplets a significant amount, and then decreases the amount that's out there circulating for other people to inhale. So your mask hygiene, how you clean it and handle it, will impact certainly your own cleanliness, just like cleaning your clothes or reusing tissue after you use it. You want to clean those to help protect yourself. Even wearing a dirty mask would indeed protect others from getting exposed to your respiratory droplets.
Does that answer your question?
And there's certainly a lot of guidelines out there about how frequently to wash. Here at the medical center, we ask everybody to wash their cloth face coverings every 24 hours. Some people are circulating through several different cloth face coverings. And there's a lot of guidance out there depending on what type of face covering you're using to help keep it clean. And I'd be glad to give individuals that information or put that out on the website if you need to.
Yeah, I think that's good information, just kind of to get out there. I've heard it from a number of people, kind of about mask etiquette, and even if you're going into a restaurant, you have to remove it, so maybe you're not removing it the right way, but it's, I think the reason why we have a mask rule in Cordova is to protect other people, and there's good individual hygiene practices you should do to protect yourself, but, as we're making decisions to protect the community as a whole. So I appreciate that information on masks. And then I just had a question, Dr. Sanders, about the business reopening phase 3/4 that we're discussing now. Looking through it, there was a lot of suggested measures in there for businesses rather than requirements. I do believe that most of the Cordova businesses will enact a lot of those suggested measures, but maybe if you could just kind of talk about best practices when businesses opening to this next phase and how those suggested measures would be really beneficial to businesses, or what you kind of saw when you're reading through phase 3, 4 for businesses.
So I think a lot of the guidelines with phase 3 and 4 and the different phases as the state has come out with them and as the CDC has come out with them, there's many different industries to think about here. Then you look at individual businesses and what an individual facility looks like and how their customers come in and how customers interact. There's a lot of variables. One of the things that the medical team has discussed doing is offering, whether it's individual one-on-one walkthroughs or workshops that people could attend, so that we can help if any businesses have questions, to come up with what could be the best practices for their specific group. It's hard to address kind of in a global way, but I think if we all are just looking at how do we help minimize people's indoor time in close contact with non-household members, and just trying to maintain that social distancing as best we can while we're moving forward with businesses, I think people can be successful. But we're really here to help, even to the point of going and doing individual walkthroughs with businesses and saying, oh, hey, look, we see this might be a point that could increase somebody's risk of contamination or increasing the infectious risk, and try to help businesses out in that way. So if there's a need, we will be putting together even entire workshops for this community. We're just kind of waiting to hear what that need is, and we haven't had any requests yet.
Okay, thank you. That's great to hear. And maybe Kathy from the Chamber can follow up with you guys to help make that bridge connection between businesses and the expertise that you guys have. I will probably be calling you myself for the reluctant then, because that's a good resource. But looking through the different phases, like you said, it is hard because each business and how it's set up is different. And so those blanket statements of requirements sometimes are hard, but really trying to do best practices and having your guys' expertise to help establish those, I think, is a really good resource for all the businesses. So thanks for offering that. And I hope that the Chamber contacts you guys to make some kind of bridge connection. And that's all I had, Clay, for my comments and questions.
Okay. Discussion, Councilman Allison.
Yeah, I guess my position on the whole thing hasn't changed a whole lot. I think as soon as we can match up with the state's guidelines and mandates, then the less time we'll have to spend explaining that there is a difference and why there's a difference, and we can focus on explaining why we suggest the things that we suggest, and why the state requires what the state requires. And I think we spent the whole last week explaining whether or not there was a mask rule or wasn't a mask rule, or should we wear a mask or shouldn't we wear a mask. And once again, I say those that want to wear a mask will wear them, and we'll wear them properly, and we'll take care of them properly. Those that don't want to wear them or are not going to take care of them, they're not going to wear them when they want. And I think it is impossible to enforce a mandate like that when all people have to do is say they have a medical situation, and you can't argue with that. So I think because of its impossibility to enforce, and the fact that we're doing good on the voluntary compliance, and you're always, now we've created a facial divide in Cordova, where you've got the ones that like it and the ones that don't, and you're always going to have that, whether it's a mandate or whether the state even takes off their recommendation for it. We're still going to, we've created a new class of citizen now, that people that like face masks and the people that don't, and I feel bad for the world in that case, but unfortunately, I think that's where we're at. So I do have one question on why, if somebody can tell me why until June 1st to start all of this and not doing it as soon as possible tomorrow, to give the opportunity out there. Again, everybody has said that the businesses aren't going to do anything until they're ready. Some of them still aren't going to, some of them aren't ever going to go back to being open full time with seating and all of that. They're going to do what they feel comfortable with, and that's their right. But I don't think it's our right to tell them that they can't open up. So I would prefer to open it up tomorrow. If somebody can tell me why we're waiting full 10 days and any other reason besides that we said 10 days in our Rule 17. So it didn't say we had to wait 10 days. It said we were giving the team up to 10 days, and I believe the IMC has weighed in and the doctors have weighed in, and nobody has a problem with it. So why are we waiting till Monday to start this?
Councilman Allison, I think you're exactly right. It's just before we scheduled this meeting, it just reflects the 10 days in code that we have up to that amount. And in talking to Dr. Sanders, they've already had the chance to weigh in and make their comments. So really, it's the will of council at this point. I would defer, Helen, if you had anything to interject there. That was just my take.
No, you're exactly right. It's a date that fell in line with the 10 days, but you as council can adjust the date either ahead or back. It's totally up to you.
Okay, with that, Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to amend the date on this to reflect the active date of whatever time that was on May 28th.
Okay, to May 28th, 8 a.m. That would be tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Is there a second?
Yes. Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend, Councilman Allison, and a second, Councilman Gleason. I think you've already spoke to your motion, Councilman Allison, but would you like to reiterate?
Nope, just would like somebody to tell me why we can't go tomorrow. So.
Okay, Councilman Gleason, would you like to speak to your second?
Yeah, it was well said by Councilman Allison, so I'll just stick with that.
Okay, so you're supporting the amendment?
Roger.
Okay, great. And so for the amendment, I'll just continue in order after Councilman Allison there. Councilman Baylor to the amendment.
Yeah, I support it.
Okay, and then I'll return with you next on the main motion when we get back to there. Councilman Sherman to the amendment.
Only from a PIO point of view, means I have to spend the rest of the sunny day working on news releases, but I would I'm not necessarily in favor of it, but I would like to hear what the rest of the council says.
Okay. Councilman Gard?
I'm in favor of the motion. What we had said before is that we're interested in getting business opened up as soon as we safely can here, and this seems like it falls within the safely category, so let's open them tomorrow.
Councilman Schaefer?
Hi, yeah, sorry. I'm also in favor of the motion or the amendment if it's within the realm of possibilities for our management team and our PIO team to do that kind of turnaround by tomorrow at 8 a.m. I also have to think about our staff, which is going to be putting a lot of extra pressure on all of a sudden. So yes, if it's possible, I guess I don't know if that's a question for the management team and PIO.
Helen, do you want to tackle that, advertising?
Well, I think what you guys will have to understand is that we're not going to be able to fully communicate that it's opening at 8 a.m. tomorrow just because it's noon and there's only certain avenues that we can get that out on. We can do a Facebook post. We can put something on our website, and then try to get something in other media as the week progresses. And if you're okay with that, then just understand that we can't possibly widely and broadly communicate to everyone by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. We can probably ask Kathy Renfelt to put a post out through her means to other businesses. So we will do everything we can, but we won't do everything that we should, at least not today.
Well said, Helen, and I would say just the same. I could take, I'll volunteer to get a hold of JR. He likes news flashes like this. He'll put it on the radio. There are people listening to this meeting. Councilman, you can push out emails to your constituents, and then if Kathy can push it out at the chamber, then we do have a radio briefing about 11 o'clock tomorrow morning that'll play at 1, 5, and 8. So that'd be fairly good coverage on fairly short notice, and not expect Councilman Sherman to get the word to each and every Cordovan between now and 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Vice Mayor Meyer, to the amendment.
First thought, I don't have an objection to the amendment, but I would like to give the opportunity to Dr. Sanders. They suggested June 1st, so I would see it that if she has any objection to that.
Dr. Sanders?
I do not have any objection to the change in the date.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we've been through all the councilmen so far, and Councilman Sherman, did you want to, you're kind of reserving comments, I think, to hear what the other council said. Did you have any additional comments?
No, I'll vote in favor of it. I'm already writing the press release.
Okay, it sounds like pretty strong consensus, so I'll go ahead and do a roll call vote on the amendment to change the effective date to May 28th, 8 a.m.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
David Gleason,
Yes.
Kathy Sherman,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
Tom Baylor.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0 on the amendment.
Okay, so the amendment carries, so back to the main motion as amended. Councilman Baylor, discussion.
Yeah, the whole thing with the mask. So where it says must wear a mask, I think we've already been told by our legal team that we can't require somebody to wear a mask. I guess I would have a question for the chief of police there. Can he find somebody if he sees them not wearing a mask?
Yeah, he's coming to the mic here.
Okay.
Oh.
I think those are on.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know why.
We're just doing a mic check here.
I'll give you 2.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So what was your question again exactly?
Well, the last time we visited, well, it was a month ago or so, and I made the statement, we own the city harbor. Why can't we just require everybody to wear a mask? And our legal team said, no, you can't do that. So now we're putting this back in here where it says you must wear a mask. So if you see somebody and they're not wearing a mask, can you give them a ticket, and will it hold up?
And where are we putting this, you must wear a mask? What document? I don't have it in front of me.
That's in Rule 15. It says in Cordova, must wear a mask, a bandana, or other type of cloth protectant.
I think this was one
Can I
maybe
weigh in here for just a
for
moment?
Helen to weigh in.
I think there's this is Helen. I just want to weigh in. We do have a rule, and I think there may be a misunderstanding around the rule. As a rule, it is enforceable, and we can require people to wear masks. I'm not sure quite how we got off of that, but we definitely at this point have a rule in place. It is a requirement. We can make people wear masks, and if you repeal it, then it'll be a different story. But right now there is a rule in place,
In my
and
understanding,
it is enforceable.
and my understanding is that's up to a $500 fine. The other one that you all, I think it was under 1185, enacted a while back, that was if you violate a mandate, is a $500 fine in mandatory court. So my understanding is under the rule, we can fine up to $500.
Okay, so let's go back to when I asked the question of the lawyer when we were talking about this, that original rule, was it 17 that come out, where it said you had to wear one in the harbor at the gas station. I asked, specifically asked her, since we own the harbor, why can't we require people to wear a mask in there? And she said, you cannot do that. You can't violate civil liberties unless, and there was some other mumbo jumbo there, but she basically told us we couldn't do it at that time. So now we're being told we can. So that's interesting. And the other thing is then that it's how are you going to prove when you go to court? Somebody's going to say, well, look, I was 6 feet away. I didn't have to wear a mask. So to me, it's going to be a really, really hard one to enforce. And I wonder, as the chief of police, how are you going to do that? I mean, you're going to take pictures, you're going to have a tape measure. For instance, I keep a mask in my truck. When I pull in to go to the grocery store, I'll get out of the truck. If nobody's on the sidewalk, I've got the mask in my hand. Before I get into the grocery store, I'm putting it on and going in and doing my shopping. I come back out. Nobody's around, I take it off. When I pump gas, it's very easy to keep 6 foot away. I'm not wearing a mask there. When I go down to the harbor, if the fleet is out, there's nobody on the docks, I go down and do my business and come back. If there's somebody there, I'm going to put a mask on. So under those circumstances, how would you ticket somebody?
And you're right. It's common sense, and we try to educate people as much as we can. And usually we go down there and we say, hey, you're a little too close. You should probably put your mask on. We try to educate rather than be heavy-handed about it. Most people are trying to do the right thing, and it's officer discretion. And you want to make sure that if you are going to cite somebody, that it's a solid reason, just like anything else. Sometimes tie goes to the runner, and you got to give the person the benefit of the doubt. Hopefully you can educate them. And, just like anything else, if you get repeat offenders, well, then you start looking at fines and things like that. But for the most part, it's like you said, you're walking down the harbor by yourself, nobody around you, you're properly socially distancing. Yeah, I'm not going to write that ticket.
This is Helen. I just want to weigh in again. We've had this mask rule in place since the very beginning. So this isn't adding a mask rule. It's modifying it. In fact, it's loosening certain things, but allowing people to have a rule specifically for dining establishments. So it just changes that piece of it. But this mask rule has been in place and is defensible. Our attorney put the rule together. So I'm a little bit confused about where we got off on that, but this rule has been in place and is defensible. It is constitutional. The only thing we can't do is require it if there are health emergencies. So if someone can't breathe with a mask on, we had to make that exception, but that's the only one we did.
So, Councilman Baylor, I actually have Holly calling in, and she'll call in here in just a second and answer that question.
Okay, that'd be fine if you want to move on in the meantime.
Okay. Discussion on the motion as amended, Councilman Sherman.
Mr. Mayor? This is Councilman Schaefer.
Yes?
I haven't gotten an opportunity to speak at all yet.
I haven't gotten to you yet. I'm going through my list.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Councilman, what I did is I went back through a different order of the list to go back to the main motion, and not all councilmen have spoken to the main motion yet.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Okay, I think the confusion was Councilman Sherman's made the main motion, and I went back to her again. So I'm actually going to skip you, Kathy, and go on to Councilman Gleason, who hasn't spoken to the main motion as amended.
Yeah, I'm in favor with the amendment, and I'm also in favor of the mask portion. The CDC says it's a good health measure, and people are just going to have to make the choice, you know. So that's all I need to say on that.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Gleason. I'm going to revert to Councilman Baylor. We have Holly on the line now, and I'll just let you pose your question.
Holly, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, I think it was almost a month ago when we brought this mandate out, and I made the statement or asked the question, since the city owns the harbor, why can't we just require everybody has to wear a mask in the harbor? And you said we could not do that. Do you remember that conversation?
I do, and I think it's a really good point. The purpose, so what I was saying is a blanket mandate without any provisions that pay attention to the reality of the disease we're talking about, COVID, would be beyond the scope of reasonableness. So if we don't have provisions in our facial covering rule that allow for people who aren't in a position where others are exposed to go maskless, or doesn't take into account that individuals who have a hard time breathing should not be required to wear a mask, things like that. If we overstep and we just put a blanket, everybody put a mask on all the time, then it would be too broad, and we would be at great risk of running afoul with the Constitution. Does that make sense? So that's why the mask rule before you has exemptions, it has limitations, it recognizes that there are scenarios and situations in which facial coverings are not required.
Okay, that makes sense, and that brings in the health reason, but also probably the most popular one is the most used one is the 6-foot rule. So as long as that's in there, then we're fine. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right, that makes sense.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Baylor. And I just wanted to, Holly did have a meeting with City Seward Council and was driving back to Anchorage and expected to be in coverage most of the time. So I just asked her to be available, and she had a good cell coverage. So thank you for calling in, Holly. I appreciate it.
Of course.
So Councilman Schaefer, to the main motion as amended.
Okay. Yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking and talking about this, and I am in support of this motion with the inclusion of the new changes to the mask rule so that it's more in line with how the state is reopening, and with the continued quarantine requirements for interstate and international travelers. And I think this is going to be a question for Dr. Sanders, but as I understand it, the state is going to revisit the travel restrictions around June 2nd, which is just now a few days after this resolution would go into effect. So I'm wondering what Dr. Sanders thinks about reopening the community kind of simultaneously with potential reduced travel restrictions, or if the travel restrictions are something that we can revisit as a community when they come up.
Hold on a second, sorry. I think it's interesting because our community has fallen into this spot several times where we're reopening on the same day that there's a big event happening, like when we had our first case. That being said, we have totally adequate testing capacity, and if we can start capturing people as they come in, it will help keep us safe because we can identify the cases and isolate them as we've done. We are getting a lot more interest in people coming in doing that testing as they arrive, so I feel really confident in that. I also think as the state opens up to interstate and international travelers, they're going to be coming up with some creative plans as well, potentially offering tests or having people get tested before they board and come into Alaska. So I don't think that they're just going to be opening it wide up. Of course, I don't know, but there's definitely been some hints that they're going to have some sort of modified requirement for people coming in. So I feel pretty good about doing this right now, even with where the state is.
Okay, yeah, and we do have like a pretty large testing capacity here in town, and so I mean, I guess this is something we can talk about with when the travel restrictions come up, but if there's some sort of testing protocol that we can do for incoming travelers or offer. Yeah.
I don't think that we need to be even readdressing it at that point until we have more cases or we have something that actually impacts our community. The medical team is positioned to test all new travelers as they're coming in. We are offering 5-day-a-week testing. I don't know of another place that's offering the wide open testing like we have here. And it's being communicated, and people know when they're coming and getting tested. So I do feel like we're ready for whatever happens.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Council. We bounced around a little bit. I think I got to everyone to speak on the main motion. Was there any councilman who didn't get to speak on the main motion? Okay, I'd open it up. We've kind of been through one round. Sounds like semi-consensus, but I just open it up for any further discussion by council.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is Allison.
Councilman Ellison.
Yeah, I'm going to go along with this resolution, but once again, I think that we need to get rid of the local mandates and go with the state thing so that we don't have the confusion that we had for the last week. I think the mask rule is impossible to enforce. Anybody who watched, reviewed, or participated in the graduation celebration of the graduates down at the local airfield there, well over 100 people, very few masks, no social distancing. Pretty evident that at that point in time anyway, the concern for the COVID bug was absent that evening, and not saying anything bad about the celebration. I appreciate the celebration and congratulate all the graduates with their efforts, but it's just kind of humorous to me to think that we're requiring everybody to wear masks and that celebration led by our local fire department, the parade and after the parade, just strikes me as funny. The other thing I'd just like to point out is, we're concerned. Our concern recently has been the fishermen and processors coming in and this whole quarantine thing, and the processors are I don't want to call it quarantining. They're locking up all of their majority of their employees for the whole summer on their respective campuses, and that's going to happen regardless of whether there's a 14-day quarantine for people coming in at the airport or not. And because the state lets essential workers do their essential work duties, the 14-day thing currently isn't stopping anybody from working on their boats or working in the processing plants or doing any of that work. So I don't see a big influx of people that aren't already happening in the way that it's going to happen. So I just don't have the fear, I guess, that's out there of a big thing. I agree with Dr. Sanders that I think we're prepared and we can handle it. So I'll go ahead and support the motion. I appreciate the relaxed max rules. It's impossible to wear a mask while you're having a beer at the bar or eating a burger at the burger joint or tacos at the taco place. It's impossible to wear the mask and do that. So, and I feel for the people that have medical issues that can't wear a mask and get chastised by half of the town for not doing that. And I hope that we can remember that we're all neighbors and everybody has their each own individual unique situation in life and don't be judgmental. So I'll support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Ellison. And I do want to respect Dr. Sanders' time. I know she had a 1 o'clock commitment. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Sanders, and answering questions and providing medical advice in the packet. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. And since there's probably so many listeners, can I just add one statement before I go?
Please.
And that, you know, the medical team, we do feel we have had a lot of support from the state and the federal level, and we feel really good about where we're at. That is coupled with people really continuing to respect the fact that we do have this virus and we do have to be cautious and continue social distancing and masking. And we're here to support everybody and help businesses get open and come up with safe practices. So thank you all for taking so much time working with this.
Thank you, Dr. Sanders. Further discussion on the motion as amended, Council. Okay, hearing none, roll call vote, please.
David Allison,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Kathy Sherman,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
David Gleason,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, next item is the discussion item the council asked for here, and it's a discussion of the COVID-19 emergency response. Or would any council like to speak to that? And let me just go ahead and go through the list here. Councilman Gleason.
No, I don't have anything.
Councilman Baylor.
No, I don't have anything.
Councilman Meyer.
Yeah, just big thanks. It was good to hear some information about the 2 hotlines for people to call in and get information for. And, you know, if someone wants to add to the discussion kind of about us having different rules here locally, I guess I just want to say that it's, and I know it's hard that we have different rules in the state, but, you know, different communities are allowed to have different restrictions because we are in different circumstances and different positions. And this isn't just a challenge that Cordova is going through or other communities in Alaska is going through. It's happening all around the country. Different communities are having mask rules and some aren't. Some businesses are having mask rules and some other businesses aren't. And so that divide, I don't believe the mask divide is something that we've really created in Cordova because unfortunately it's happening everywhere. People wearing masks are getting harassed. People aren't wearing masks are getting harassed. It's really a shame that this situation is happening that it is. So I really do feel for the divide that's happening. I wish it wasn't there because this is something that we are all in together, all of us. But I think that we are doing good as a community, and our divide isn't as big as it is other places. It's unfortunate that it is even happening here in Cordova, but unfortunately, it's just happening everywhere. And I just really appreciate all the work that Cordovans are doing, staying safe, wearing masks, and this emergency COVID response is really tough on everybody. But I think in Cordova overall, we are doing pretty well, and we are keeping it at bay, even with the influx in our main industry going ahead. So that's kind of all my thoughts about the emergency response.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Guard.
No comment.
Councilman Allison.
No comment. Thank you.
Councilman Schaefer. You may still be on mute, Councilman Schaefer.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, the only comment I have is that I agree that Cordova as a community, we're doing really well. And so now as we begin to open up even more, it's on each and every one of us in the community to keep each other safe and healthy. So let's keep it up and let's keep taking care of each other.
Thank you. Councilman Sherman.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to really thank Dr. Sanders. I think her guidance has been excellent through all of this and very helpful, and I'm glad she's back in town. I think we do need to just move forward, but with respect for all, and the librarian and me wants everyone in town to read Dr. Seuss's book called The Sneetches, and it's about some people who have stars on their bellies and some people who don't, and it's just kind of ringing true with me about math, and it's got a happy ending, so I'm going to recommend everybody read it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Sherman. And the incident commander here has been giving me sign language. You are banned from PIO work today. You have to go outside and be in the sunshine. If anybody passes within 20 feet of him, you can tell them that the rules are effective at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. No more, no less.
Thank you, Paul.
And actually, I just wanted to update council along those lines. JR does listen along to these meetings and everything, and he just texted me. He's going to schedule an after meeting radio briefing that I can call and do an after briefing that he can run on both channels, both radio stations fairly intensively. So again, we really appreciate his support through this. And also, I just wanted to, on the COVID-19 comments here, thank Helen. And it's a difficult position. The whole community is wrestling with being on different parts of the spectrum on concern and rules and so forth. And she's, I think, done a good job putting together something here that council worked well on and compromised a little bit and got us a path forward. So I appreciate your work, council. It's difficult to try to cover the whole range of community expectations here. And I think you're doing a great job.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, I guess since you said JR is listening, just a comment. I listened to your discussion the other day about the city has the right to be more strict with their regulations. And that is true, but there's some caveats to that it has to be health and science-based. And also they want you to contact them and work with the state to make sure that you can be more restrictive. So that didn't really come true on your discussion with him the other day. But I think it's important that the community knows that we just can't do something out of fear. So, not that we have lately, but that needs to be clarified. Thank you.
Okay. Further COVID-19 discussion, council. I'll remind the public that the audience comments will be open again, and that number is 253-6202, 253-6202, and you can call in now. Other comments, council? Okay, while we're waiting for any Chief Hicks has something to add.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I passed this along to the team this morning too. I've been, in incident management stuff for quite a while now. Every incident boils down to three things: life safety, incident stabilization, and property conservation, or in this case, economic recovery. So early on, there was fear and there was confusion, and our number one priority was life safety, and it always will be. We addressed those fears and concerns, got plans in place. We moved into the next phase, which is incident stabilization. That's where we're at right now. Everything's stable. We have plans in place. We're in a really good place right now. And now we're starting to work on opening things up and recovery. Anytime that, if this thing goes sideways, it always goes back to life safety. We can back up and regroup and address the problem until we stabilize. If we become unstable, we want to stabilize. So we're in a really good spot right now. We've had really good support from the medical team, the state and federal government. I just wanted to throw that out there that, the incident is stable, and if it becomes unstable, we can always back up. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief Hicks. So I'm not seeing any audience calls coming in. Any further COVID-19 discussion before we move on to council comments? Got one more piece. Okay. All right, we'll go on to council comments then. Councilman Sherman. Councilman Sherman?
No comments.
Councilman Schaefer,
No comment. Thank you to everyone.
Councilman Guard,
No comment, thank you.
Vice Mayor Meyer,
No comments, thanks.
Councilman Allison,
Yeah, just get out there and enjoy paradise today. Thank you all.
thank you. Councilman Gleason,
No comment. Is it too early to move to adjourn?
right after Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, I do have a comment. I don't know what that was, what you're passing out, the $5 kit used at the stores, if they're doing things right. I would caution against giving elected officials the ability to hand out money to their voters. So that doesn't really seem like a good idea.
Maybe you need to change your campaign strategy. Yeah, good point, Councilman Baylor. All right, thank you. Now, Councilman Gleason, I think I heard a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Is there any objection? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.